Welcome back to my Super Metroid 100% item collection rate guide and walkthrough. We are now done with the filler, and we're now going to go ahead and go into probably what is the point of the game where it starts getting a little bit bullshit. And the first trace of bullshit is the wrecked ship. An area you have to go through that's, albeit short, but you have to fight a whole boss without getting one save point, and if you so much as mess up, it's back to the ship for you. Do not pass go, do not collect 200. Now you might remember this room, and well, we were here earlier in order to get a missile, and now that we have the grapple beam, I horribly attempt to connect the dots, literally, with my grapple beam. We got it. Just show that even I can be a little bit of a noob at this game at times, but hopefully Dread will bring that shit back, since that game is getting a lot of positive reception as of the time of this recording. But anyway, when you do this platforming bit, make sure you stand on the ledge and use the grapple beam. Make sure you use this other creature as your source of grappling beam. You definitely don't want to mess up this jump, because if you do, you are getting your ass set back to the start, and going in underwater is a slow, miserable experience. Now, just to mention with this area, you are locked out of most of it, with your only means of extra upgrade is one extra missile expansion, which you could theoretically get this missile expansion, go fight the door, then go all the way back just to save maybe a little bit of extra time. That, or you could use a save editor, which is what I actually had to use, because believe it or not, my fucking footage when I fought Phantoon got corrupted, and I had to, well, because I don't want to do my whole fucking guide all over again, I had to re-download it, use the footage that was on here, and try to replicate the footage to the best of my ability. As you'll see, this little droid bastard is locking us out of progression. He is locking the third path that will get us a super missile, but we can't get to it, so I'm just showing that there is nothing you can do in order to move this fucker. Your only best bet is to just remember this for later, as I horrendously am a stubborn fuck who just can't figure out what the fuck he wants to do with his pathetic fucking miserable fucking life. And even doing the bomb jump, yeah, I was not a happy boy that day. But anyway, there is one missile expansion you can get. It is actually through a little secret path that surprisingly is not locked, and I actually would recommend getting this right away, since there is a series of spikes that will impede your progress if you choose to get it later. Kind of astonishing the developers would give you a break when you get this missile expansion. Now, as I said, you can't save in this area until you fight the boss. And backtracking just to go back to get that save is not really worth it, honestly. So, you're going to have to grit your teeth and bear it, as Phantoon can probably be one of the hardest bosses in the game if you're not prepared properly, since he hits very hard, and, well, his bullshit exceeds far beyond what possibly might come later, but we'll get to that later. But for right now, go ahead and shoot that super missile, and this is the part of the video that I had to edit, as you'll hear by a sound cue. That sound cue basically means I had to re-record this section, but thankfully everything else is untouched. Now, on with the fight. Don't touch those flames because they will hurt you. They're not just there for show. Now, Phantoon, he is a bit of a tricky son of a bitch. You have to shoot him when his eye is open, and if you manage to miss, you might as well reset too many times, because I've been to hit him with 5 super missiles, and he'll die. The problem is, though, if you use your super missiles, he will do this attack, which hurts very hard, and you essentially have to use your somersault charging ability in order to get, essentially, invincibility frames. Now, you don't necessarily have to be good at dodging those little wave things. You just have to make sure that you're charged up, and as long as you do so while somersaulting, you'll be fine. Now, as you can notice, I took a very big hit there or a big miss, excuse me, because this fight is kind of hard to get down the timing of where you have to hit. So even on my second attempt at this, as far as recent memory goes, I had to this is not exactly a perfect speedrunning fight. Now, I'm not even sure if you can get another hit after Phantoon opens his eye momentarily, but I am not certain. You definitely want to play this fight safe, but you also want to make sure you are prepared to shoot him at any moment. There's the third eye, or third shot. As I get hit a lot, as you can tell, I got hit by a lot. This fight can be pretty nerve-wracking since you're essentially fighting a spirit of this ship, which apparently some people speculated that this was the wrecked ship that was in Zero Mission, although the creator of Metroid has gone to say that this ship is not the same as it was in Zero Mission, even though there is a very clear case of it being so, but maybe he was just being a funny jackass, or maybe his word is absolute law and we're all just fucking idiots. But either way, I'm not quite sure if Metroid Dread will answer any of these questions. It's honestly astonishing just how long it's been since we got a Metroid game, and the only other Metroid game that really kind of gave any extra confirmation was Other M, and that game is one of the worst games in terms of story, honestly. Like, I've read up that Metroid Prime isn't exactly canon, but somehow Metroid Other M is. And are we really supposed to believe that Samus just fucking was scared of Ripley, even though she's fought that fucker more than enough times, especially in the comics that are canon, and yet she has a fucking emotional breakdown because Team Ninja are a bunch of fucking assholes who know nothing about writing female characters unless it's either damsel distress or fucking fan service, or possibly both. But what the fuck do I know? But anyway, we restored power to the ship. We now got these very eerie sounding robots who sound a lot like that one song in Driver 3 back on PlayStation 2, which that game was really misunderstood, honestly. Well, okay, it's kind of a shitty game, but it definitely does a lot of cool stuff, honestly. People kind of wrote it off, though, because it was just essentially a third-rate Grand Theft Auto, but I like the game. It's got some good stuff going for it, honestly. Now, I was going to put this in a different video, but because it's quite a bit to cover, I said, fuck it, I'm just going to do it as a whole one video. Now that we have left the save room, you'll probably notice that the map is a little bit different. That is because, again, I had to use the SRAM editor, or SRAM, or SRAM, I don't know. It's the save data within the Super Nintendo cartridge, which I had to do in order to assure that I would have to repeat my progress. So I apologize for any inconsistencies. And as you can tell, my health is at the very low because I got my ass kicked by fucking, what's-his-face. So you're going to notice that I'm going to be playing a little bit harder and more carefully and more recklessly, since these fucking bug-like creatures do a massive amount of damage, and I don't even think you can like use that charge attack unless their health is low enough. So take note of that. Make sure you actually damage them first, or just keep firing at them and then use your super missiles or some shit. I don't know what the fuck I was doing, honestly. I was on a fucking spree or something. I don't even know. It's not even like a spree of Halo, Call of Duty, just a fucking reckless spree. But you definitely do want to save your game after you fight Phantoon, because that boss is not very easy. I want to say it's the hardest boss in the game, but maybe so if you're ill-prepared, but he can definitely be a pretty challenging boss. I'm not even sure what to rank him, honestly. I don't really play this game enough to fully analyze what bosses are bullshit, but I can tell you Meridia is probably the most bullshit area in the entire game. And it's probably the main reason I otherwise would not even bother playing this game to full completion, because of Meridia alone. Seriously, playing Meridia kind of gave me fucking carpal tunnel for a little bit. Not an extreme case of it, but because of the way I play these games on an emulator, it really gave me shit. Now, speaking of shit, let me explain what this exactly is supposed to do here. Now, there is a missile expansion here, but in order to reach it, you have to shoot these robots, and you have to shoot it pretty fast, because these robots are kind of shitty, and they only respond by movement, or by shooting them, so just shoot them, and they'll eventually fall into the spike pit, allowing you to get the ever so shitty fucking missile expansion. Yay. So as you can see, I have zero energy, but since we have shot all the doors, I'm just going to run past everything. This is definitely a room you want to make sure you open all these doors, because if you don't, you're going to be fighting these creatures, and you do not want to be fighting them more than once. I'm so glad this game has a mechanic, because if that were the case, then this game would be a fucking nightmare. And I'm pretty sure there's a ROM hack that makes this game even harder. And for that purpose, I'm not doing it, since most people who are probably playing this game are probably playing it on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Switch Online feature, which, don't get me wrong, it's a great service to let you play all these classic Super Nintendo games, but I've been emulating this game so fucking long that this service is honestly kind of extremely shitty. Like, seriously. Like, it's a great way to play these games. It has the most basic features, like, you know, of course, rewinding, which is kind of nice. You know, I didn't really have rewinds back in the day, but not that you really needed it, since save states were plentiful. You had like, what, 9 slots? Or 10? I think 10. Yeah, 10 slots on ZSNES, which is the emulator that I am using to record this in order to assure maximum efficiency when recording this guide. Now, if I wasn't using an emulator, I had to re-record this all over again, because, you know, you can't just simply use a SRAM editor. And as much as I hate to say it, and as much as I piss off some people, I don't have the actual card. Now, this right here, you definitely don't want to do. I use a bunch of super missiles in place of just regular bomb jumping, which, don't do this. This will actually screw me over later on, because I did not have enough power bombs for a section coming up. So, don't do that. What the fuck? Oh shit. Fucking Phantoon lives on. He has come to corrupt my data. But you'll want to go through that hole and head to the left to get that next missile expansion. This area can be a little tricky. Like I mentioned, if you're ever stuck, always use the X-ray in order to see where you're going. Speaking of going, I believe I am heading back to my ship to save, since I took quite a beating. And also, at one point, I did actually end up missing a missile expansion before the Phantoon fight. Now, a reason why I did not collect this initially was because I wanted to make sure I had a clean cut of me heading to the Phantoon fight, and because I must have done this at least 5 to 6 times, I said, fuck it, I'm just going to go straight to the fight so I don't lose my rhythm. I took the episode of King of the Hill where Hank Hill, he bets on a pro football player to throw a football, I think, into a, what was it, Arlen beer or some shit. I forget the brand, honestly. It's been too long since I watched that show. One of my favorite episodes of King of the Hill, or, no, excuse me, not only one of my favorite episodes, but one of my favorite animated sitcoms of all time. I fucking love King of the Hill. I know it's an acquired taste, but holy shit, is that show so mature? Yeah, it's a couple shitty episodes, but honestly, what doesn't? It's just a fucking great show. But anyway, much like in an episode where Hank Hill, he had to bet a lot on a dude who had to throw a football in order to assure that Hank would win a lot of money. The dude ended up messing up, and Hank was very pissed off because the dude, he practiced without his jacket, and he wanted to make sure he got the rhythm, and much like with me, this is going somewhere, don't worry. I ended up fucking up my rhythm so much, I just said, fuck it, I'm not going to keep getting this missile expansion every time, since the fucking path to getting it is a real bitch. And the only thing I get it in this specific instance, since, you know, it can be a real bitch. Now, because to go back to the ship, I have to do this platforming again, which I think because I'm playing on keyboard, the platforming is a little bit low-key fucked up. But thankfully, if you take your time, you won't get too fucked as I attempt to, yep, there it is, I fall down into the rabbit hole, and now I'm basically fucked. Now, thankfully, there aren't that many enemies down here, and I think this is the point where I either say make it or break it, and say fuck it, and just go straight to the missile expansion, which is right over here. So, you want to bomb jump, I believe, or not bomb jump, sorry. You want to do this little trick where you jump and then immediately push down until you get into the morph ball, and this will allow you to get this little missile tank without having to get the gravity suit. It's not a major skip. And I'm pretty sure anyone can do it. It's not that difficult of a trick. I haven't really been utilizing a lot of difficult skips, which I'm quite curious on how much speedrunning techniques will be for Metroid Dread. I'm sure that the speedrunners will get quite to work on it, and I can use those videos myself in case Metroid Dread ends up being a very, very shittily designed game. Who knows? There's been how many Metroid games, and Samus Returns came out was the last major game, and that kind of had some questionable design choices, but I'm sure that game was at least well received for the most part. It's just that it was on the fucking 3DS, some changes were made, and in my personal opinion, having the Metroid Prime fanfare was probably the laziest design choice that Nintendo could ever make for a game like that. I mean, come on. They could not even bother remixing, like, the Metroid 2 item fanfare. Come on. Like, they remixed the music. But whatever. Anyway, now that we got our shit charged up, hopefully you won't have to endure that pain again. But for the moment, since I believe now we're going to get the gravity suit, which is what you're going to need in order to traverse through Meridia. And if you don't get the gravity suit, you're going to pretty much make Meridia even more bullshit than it already is. I cannot stress enough on how much I cannot stand Meridia. And I actually tweeted about this, and I wasn't going to make a video on it, but I might as well address it here. So, I actually saw a video of a dude criticizing Super Metroid. I'm like, okay, maybe this video won't be so bad, you know. It's always nice to have a, you know, critical outlook on a game that's well as liked as this. I'm not saying Super Metroid's a terrible game. It definitely does have a lot of great things. But much like a classic Doom, there are definitely some things about this game that can be really shitty. In my particular case, Meridia. But the dude in question, however, went to question on how the game's opening, the Sarah Space Station, is not a good tutorial. Are you fucking kidding me? Speaking of kid, look at this fucking shit. This is a particularly unique enemy. I forget its name, but it seems to have the same color palette as Samus's Various suit. It only appears in this one instance, and it seems to follow your exact position. I'm sure there's a story on this, but I don't quite know what exactly this character's beef is. It only appears in this one instance. I thought I tried changing the color in order to force it, but it seems to just be stuck to the Various suit palette, so I just said fuck and I'll leave it alone. So there's a little interesting secret. Now, since this section requires pretty much the same use of the grapple beam, I'm going to continue my little rant. So this dude pretty much went on to criticize Super Metroid, calling the Sarah Space Station a very shitty tutorial. And my ideal drawing point of the video, which, by the way, nice little visual glitch, make sure you go into the Morphing Ball, and as you watch this only actual cutscene in the game so far, let me continue my rant once again. So, the dude went on to complain about how Symphony of the Night, despite having an option where you can buy a map which only covers the basic amounts of the area of the castle, this castle is a creature of chaos. It may take many incarnations. This dude went on to complain about how Super Metroid gives you an option to uncover basic parts of the map, except at least in Symphony of the Night, you buy one map and you get the whole castle covered. And in Super Metroid, you have to do this every time you enter a new area. Except for Torian, which makes sense. But this person, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You mean to tell me you're essentially a Symphony of the Night fanboy, the game that pretty much took inspiration from Super Metroid, and you're going to shut in this game for things that Symphony of the Night did? Are you shitting me? I can't stand people who do that, honestly. Like, if you're going to criticize a game but praise another game for doing the exact same thing, you're a hypocrite, and I don't think I'll ever trust you when you do shit like that more than once. I know sometimes you might say things that, like, might be an oversight, but if it's a consistent pattern where you just keep shitting on a game but praise another for doing the exact same thing, you are not a credible source of information. Now, speaking of information, I actually somewhat do a little blunder. You can actually blow up this Chozo statue and the wall behind it in order to get access to an area, which I unfortunately do not do, so you do not get to see the wonders that is the floating missile capsule of wonderfulness. But thankfully, this little secret where you get to, as I mess up for some reason, doing the Shine Spark up there is pretty simple as I mess up. What you have to do is use the Shine Spark to get up to this platform land on the platform that's right below. Don't fall into that little pit right there, because you fall. And then we get the second reserve tank, which, in case you forget what they are, since it's only 4 in the entirety of the fucking game, they essentially act as sub-tanks to Mega Man X, where you can fill them up, and you can use them as a means to heal yourself, which only get about 4 energy tanks worth of reserve, as they're called, or you can just, well, you know, you have it set to auto, and when you die, it'll refill up depending on how many reserve you have, which is kind of cheating, but it's whatever. And someone's like, oh, it's not cheating, it's part of the game. But it's like, there really aren't that many Metroid games that actually do this. Fusion didn't bring it back, Zero Mission didn't bring it back. I don't think the Prime games really did this either, so this is one of those things where this game just doesn't do that. As I was looking something up, probably, so I'll be editing that out. But anyway, now that we got the gravity suit, we can now finally move underwater, no problem. Which is great, because this thing essentially makes movement a hell of a lot easier. You're still going to get slowed down in lava, but at this point, there really isn't any areas that actually have lava, except for, like, certain parts of Norfair and, of course, Torian. So, now that we have the gravity suit, we can actually now head into Meridia, which is what we're going to be doing next. What the fuck? Sorry. Anyway, this section right here has a bunch of spikes, so be very careful not to get touched by them, because they will do a lot of damage, and especially when you land on the opposite end where there's a bunch of shitty areas. Now, you could feasibly not use the gravity suit to get here, but you will take a lot of damage, and if you did, thankfully there is a energy tank which you can get right here, which will allow you to recover all your lost damage. It's very simple, just land on those platforms, try mess up for some reason. But of course, if you're good at wall jumping, you can just do what I'm about to do probably in about a second, because I keep messing this up. You can just essentially wall jump up there and just get your energy tank, get your man, and well, we can move the fuck on. So, there's your energy tank. Very simple item to get. Not a hard one at all. Probably a little bit hard if you don't know how to wall jump, but at this point, you probably should be recognizable and familiar with wall jumping, which I am also hoping that Metroid Dread will finally fix, because as much as technical this wall jumping is, it can be a little bit strainful when you're someone like me who usually plays emulator games with keyboard, and the way that I play these games, particularly with Q, W, A, S, Z, and X as my buttons, and of course the arrow keys for movement, and with the way that I play as well, my arm, the part of my hand does get a little bit strained after a while, and it definitely has taken place when we get into Meridia. Now, believe it or not, I actually do enter this way for a very specific reason. You don't want to go in where the tube is, although we will be going there later in the next installment, but there is actually a power they're going to be getting that will allow us to get through this area a little bit easier. Which, because of how bullshit Meridia is, I'm going to have to be doing a lot of editing, because there's just simply too much filler for me to endure all this bullshit. Now, speaking of bullshit, there really isn't anything in here that I can think of. So, this area is pretty basic to get through, so need worry not on using these power bombs like I have, because getting through this area is pretty freaking easy, except for that little illusory fake-ass wall. Now, if there is, of course, a power bomb door as there is, make sure you use it and enter Meridia, as there is surprisingly not another one, which I still don't understand why power bombs don't open the blue doors. That is honestly some dumbass shit. Like, could it not have bothered Nintendo to actually incorporate this, or at least have a simple ROM hack that lets you do that shit? Anyway, as we now enter into Meridia, we're going to be going into this specific path, because we're going to be picking up a couple items before we get into the worst part of this fucking game. But first, a save station, which you'll want to take, because thankfully this is the end of this installment, which means in the next part, you get to hear Escape and play a rant about why Meridia sucks, and why this fucking area pisses me off. But, not much else to say, but thank you for watching, and, well, you take care.